So I wanted to learn a little bit about your process when you're creating a comic book. How does what does the process start? Like, do you have this general idea? There's this seed planted, and you kind of run with it, or do you talk to Jim, or do you talk to Steve, or how does it kind of come to be when you're like, hey, I have this idea for a book? Do you talk to your wife Lisa? What's the process?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer in tell everybody what you're up to. So I just start throwing out ideas. I'm not worried about people stealing my ideas. I think the execution is everything. So with Neon Future, I'll just walk you from the top. So I know I want to convince Steve to do a book. So I go and I pitch a story around Neon Future, around that brand. That branding obviously means a lot to him, around an optimistic future and what would that look like, but that we obviously need the drama. So it's going to have to start as far away from where we want to end up as possible. So if we want to end up somewhere beautiful, we have to start somewhere ugly. And so, pitch the idea 30 years in the future. Advanced technology has been made illegal, and this guy is resurrected using illegal technology. I'm in, right? So that's where that starts. Then it's like, okay, well, for real, who are the characters, right? Like, we have this kind of cool high-level idea, but like, who are the characters? Let's start outlining that. We would go to his office and we would just brainstorm. We'd throw ideas back and forth. Well, we could do this. What about that? What about this character? What about that? I'd Pinterest board. I'm a freak on Pinterest. I love Pinterest, man. So much cool inspiration out there. And so start getting the like visual look. I knew I wanted this to have cyberpunk elements. I am a cyberpunk fiend. I absolutely love it. It is my favorite aesthetic. If I could live in a cyberpunk world, as probably ill-advised as that is, I would absolutely take that. I just am so in love with that aesthetic. So knew that we wanted it to be that. Start compiling the like reference pieces. Bring on the first concept artist. Start concepting things, putting characters together. What do they look like? That starts, Jim and I. So first with Steve, and then we identify we want to work with Jim. Bring Jim on, and then now that Jim is on, now it's like things are starting to become story. And so Jim and I go back and forth probably for a couple months, really part-time, just like bouncing ideas. What do you think about this? While we were looking for 2 more writers to join the team so that we had the writer's room. And so we had really created like this whole document that was like the world of Neon Future. When is it set? What happened? What happened before it? What is Article 10, which is Article 10, which is taken from the Gulag Archipelago, which if you haven't read that, read that. So terrifying about Stalin, Russia. Absolutely bananas. And so taking that, figuring out sort of what was our moment, that, this legal document that starts this cascade of problems, and then building all that out. So we had Pinterest boards for the weapons, for, the military, which of course they eschew advanced technology. So their weaponry would look different than the Neon Future Underground Rebellion technology because they embrace it. And what does somebody who's augmented look like? How like cool and futuristic is the technology? Like, you're really getting clear on all of that. Like clarity, clarity, clarity. That is my like driving force as a creative, because you've got to now get this out to a team. And if the team doesn't understand it, now you're pulling in different directions, especially because our pencilers right now are out of house. So we've got one guy in England and another guy in Brazil. So it's like, woof, like you've really got to be communicating visually. So we put this document together, had all these links to like different boards and Pinterest boards. And so tried to make that as clear as humanly possible, brought the writers in, started breaking stories. So, okay, here are the first 6 issues. What has to happen across the whole thing, breaking it down to individual issues. Then we would really outline the individual, all 6. And then we went into, all right, like proper, almost panel by panel outlining, but certainly page by page outlining. Then once we had that, then we would do an ultra detailed group breakdown, and then one person would go off and script. And then by that point, hopefully for the most part, it was just filling in sort of the color, because as a team we would have done, all of the like really hard work. And then we sit down as a team and we go through literally every line. And is this working? Is this popping? Is it not popping? And then once we had the script and you think you're done, of course, you're only about 80% of the way done with the script. And then you send it to the pencilers and they're like, oh, this is amazing, this is confusing, and you tweak it a little bit more. And doing phone calls whenever possible. I think that email will be the downfall of Western civilization. You heard it here first. I really think it's an abhorrent form of communication, and I try to use it as little as possible. So we would talk through whatever we needed, get prelims. Prelims are your bread and butter, so if the story is clear, make changes there when it's still relatively cheap. And then once we approve prelims, then we obviously go to full pencils. And when the pencils start coming in, that's maybe where things are a little bit different. In our process, we have probably about 4 colorists that touch any one panel.
Wow.
So we have people that flat, and we have people that do like a primary pass, and then we have a polish pass. And that's how we're able to get the ultimate look of the book to be different than just the typical comic book coloring. So that's, and all of our, that's not true. 85% of our colorists are in-house. So we do have 1 or 2 people that will occasionally send something out to, but polish is always done in-house so that we can get uniformity across the book. And then at that point, as we're getting the letter put on it, then I'm looking at, does the story really make sense now that I have the visual, now that I can direct the eye with color, all of that? Am I really telling the story that I thought I was telling? Is there any confusion? And we are an entirely digital shop. And the reason we're entirely digital is we may have something like, oh, flip the character because the eye line is off, right? And now we can start to use some of the tools and techniques of film to make things clear, because one of my beefs with comics, dude, is oftentimes people don't acknowledge that when you draw something over and over from a different angle, one character, you may not suddenly know which character that actually is.
Absolutely.
It's harder than you think, right? So having the ability in the end to make little flips, adjustments, add a line of dialogue, take a line of dialogue away, like whatever the case may be, to be able to do all of that in-house to really polish the book. And then we sat as a team. This was actually really fun, although I don't think anybody wants to do it on every issue. But we had one of those, till like midnight runs on the night before we had to send it to print, where we were just combing through everything. How do we polish this? How do we make it a little bit better? How do we tweak the way that the title's displayed on the, the front cover, and picking our covers. We did 6 covers for the first issue, and just, making sure that they're all like perfect and everything's right where it should be. But we did it as a group, and it was just awesome, man. Like look, in any creative endeavor, you run the risk of, is this groupthink and no singular voice is coming through? And that's a waste, and nobody, least of all the reader, is going to enjoy that. Or have you, you're so siloed and so solo that yes, it's a singular voice, but there's nobody there to check you for things like clarity, or you're not coming across the way that you thought you were coming across, or an idea that would stump a group for 0.3 seconds ends up stymieing you for 3 days, right? Mm-hmm. So just like finding that balance between not becoming groupthink and there still be like a really cool dynamic voice that comes through with surprising choices, but taking advantage of all the things that come along with a collective, whole bunch of eyes, and just people that have really bought in to what we're doing. Because at the end of the day, and I know I said this before we started rolling, but our mission isn't just to sell comics. Our mission is to pull people out of the matrix. I want to give people an empowering mindset. And this all started, I used to work in the inner cities, and dude, I've just seen extraordinary humans do nothing with their life because they don't believe they can. And I've seen other people who society had given up on, convicted felons, come out and do extraordinary things because they learned that they could. And so the reason that I use The Matrix as like the dominant metaphor in my life is it's a film about belief. That's it. Mm-hmm. A guy goes from not being able to do something to being able to do it by believing in himself. And that is so close to true about the human experience. And just to set everybody at ease, the thing you have to believe is not that you can jump or fly or anything like that. It's to believe that you can learn. So humans are the ultimate adaptation machine, but most people don't put themselves under the disciplined stress to get better because they don't believe that that energy and effort will be rewarded with an increase in capability, but it will. So getting people to believe that is literally the mission of the company, but to bury that deeply enough in a compelling narrative that nobody ever, ever, ever feels like they're being preached to, but that there's some real substance is like our shtick. So that just galvanizes our team in a way that if we were just telling good stories but didn't have like that emotional thematic core, I don't think we'd be able to galvanize the team as much.
But that's beautiful. It's really, truly beautiful how you hope to inspire people and how you do that. That's one of my goals as well with this show. The goal of this show is to help people understand and make comics better, because I felt like there was no place for that. And that was something that with this show, that was the whole purpose of it, was so people can kind of have that belief in themselves and go, okay, oh, this person did it. Like, what separated? How come they could do it and I couldn't do it? What did they do? How did they make it happen? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of demystifying that whole process. And I think that's fascinating.
And can I just say,
mm-hmm.
dude, you are the best thing in comics. Like, this is bananas.
Thank you, man.
When you started doing this, I was like, this is amazing. So yeah, I'm a voracious listener to this podcast for those reasons, like getting the insights into creatives. You know, somebody who was doing it for the first time, like this was something that I really leaned on. To hear other people's process was just invaluable.
That's very awesome of you, man. Thank you for being a fan of the show. And
For sure.
and my thing that really makes me so happy is you're listening to these things and you're actually putting them into action. And that's what it's about. It's about taking those concepts and saying, hey, this is what people talked about. How do I do that? And this is you doing it, and you're making it happen, and it's an amazing thing to see. And your success is going to be amazing, and I can't wait to
Thank you, man.
to see it and be a part of it.
Thank you.